I'll come back to you about the trauma. Let's look at that part about the trauma. Let's see what can be done. But I want to ask Hafsat, would you like to go back home?
Yes.
Now that the Boko Haram has been defeated in Borno State.
But I know they will stay. They don't burn everything. Where would they live? And don't burn everywhere. So if I go safe, I don't see house where I will stay inside. I don't get any place where I will
What's
stay.
the name of your village?
My name is Bedi.
No.
For my village.
The name of your village is Bedi.
Okay. Nimishika.
Nimishika. Okay. Yeah, that question about the trauma. You know, she talked about her daughter, when she hears the fireworks, how she runs and all. And she talks about some of the things she's gone through. How best can that be handled? With the enormity of people that have been displaced. I mean, maybe one at a time. Is there something that can be done?
Again, it comes back to, I know that there was some work being done in terms of rehabilitating and sort of doing some trauma counseling for some or some people. But it's services is very difficult. Again, it comes back to mapping out where are the displaced people, what is going on with them, where do they live, and how can they access, you know. I know I hate saying, oh, the government has to, but they are the ones that have that agency. They're the ones that are responsible for this. People like us, the NGOs, the other aid agencies, we just come in to support what they're doing. You know, but if they're not setting the tone, it's very hard for you to go to a Yaba psychiatric, for example, and say, oh, we have a number of displaced people. We need you to please provide services to do trauma counseling. And what we're having to do, for example, is find independent means. So, for example, now we're in talks with a potential partner in Switzerland who wants to come in and do some, like a program, maybe I think about a number of weeks with traumatized persons, you know. And they're also talking, the trauma is on different levels. You have men, they have their own level of trauma to deal with. You have women who have their own level of trauma, and on different things. Some have witnessed, some have actually experienced being abducted by Boko Haram, raped by them, and some of them have had children with them, you know, dealing with all of that. Then you have the children who are having to deal with their own trauma. Again, there's the younger children, the teenage children. So it's a whole spectrum yet again. And the more, you know, we look at that, I will also say and appeal to funders. You know, people have this fixed idea in their minds that to help an IDP, you have to go to a camp. You don't have to. Unfortunately, too, we also have that whole phenomenon of, oh, we're not interested in trauma. We just want to go and give food and take the picture so that Nigerians or people can see on the newspaper. All well and good, you know, but it's much more than that. You know, there's a need of shelter. They didn't talk about that, but she's talked about not having a home to go back to, for example, and that's the case for many. One of the things also with rehabilitation, reintegration, because they're meant to be reintegrated, you know, the way it's supposed to be. After you've been counseled and you're working through, you get reintegrated back into society because you've gone through this.
So how would that work if you're getting that kind of stigmatization as per you can't even stay in your village, you have to run out to us? So.
Exactly. So there's quite a bit of that stigmatization. But then again, because, you know, remember when Ebola happened, and remember the effort it took for people to even accept Ebola survivors. See what it had to, see what the governor had to do, for example, in Lagos State. It's the same thing. You know, if you don't put in that level of effort, that level of work, the stigmatization will still continue. Of course, there are also cultural
You will
issues,
continue this conversation, but
sure.
I need to ask you a question. What's your educational qualification?
Diploma in accountancy. That's what I read.
Which school?
At Federal Polytechnic, Mobi.
Okay, so diploma in accountancy. So if someone had a job for you, I mean, after you put to bed, would you want the job?
I want the job.
What's your husband's qualification in education?
Secondary school.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you've said a lot about some state governments not even wanting to accept that there are IDPs in their state. You're in Lagos. Have you made of going talk to the government and say, look at what we have found in these areas? Have you done that?
So a number of times we have. You know, the first person you really would reach out to is Lagos State Emergency Management Agency. So initially, when we first even heard and we started having contact with displaced here in Lagos, and we'd even written a letter to them to say, please come with us to come and visit and see and make your own assessment, because we we don't have even the resources to ascertain who is really displaced and who isn't, but you probably do. The response we got at that time was that, they were in transition. This was when the government was transiting to a new, they were in transition. The first time we actually had contact with displaced people in Lagos was, I think, around April 2015. We'd been seeing, and we're trying to find out where we could, but it was around April or, it was about May or June. And so when we wrote to LASEMA, we took the letter there, and they said, it's in transition, or whatever. And we reached out to them again a few months later, and we said, please come. Reached out. I remember particularly meeting with the head of the agency, and he was like, the displaced people are those ones that were refugees. Sometimes some of them were camped out in Ikoyi somewhere, but those ones were refugees that came from some country. They were seeking asylum here. They came either from, I think it was Togo or somewhere, neighboring. And I said, no, sir, these are IDPs from the north, and we'd like you to come on a visit with us, We also talked about how we would work together on different things, but that visit didn't necessarily materialize. A few weeks later, channels actually carried a news report about some of the children that had fled. And, they came to visit some of the children or come and see and interview some of them with us. NEMA, Southwest Zone, now saw that and did indeed come on that site visit with us eventually. They called us and we went to where, a number of them had congregated. And they were in a church at the time, and they asked the church leaders, how are you sure these are displaced people? Some of them might have been Okada riders. The church leaders were like, look, we interviewed them ourselves. We're from Michika, whatever. We know where they are. And they were like, okay, they addressed the IDPs. This was NEMA Southwest now. And said, don't worry. This was last year? This was last year. And they were like, don't worry, we'll come back, and told them. So anyway, bottom line, never came back. We contacted LASEMA again. LASEMA insisted they send people to that church, which when we spoke to the church, they never did. So there was a lot of back and forth. So in the end, we said, let's forget this. Let's focus on what we can do. We're still open, of course. If LASEMA wants to do something, of course.
We do have some people that have indicated interest to help. We'll get back to you with some of that information. But we've had in the studio here Jonathan Ichava, Executive Director of CESA, Hafsat Mustafa, an internally displaced person, and Rejoice Thomas, also an internally displaced person. Let's hope that Nigerians and indeed well-meaning citizens and residents of Nigeria and those watching us can come together to support these internally displaced persons, not just in the council but all over. So as we'll be back in a moment, please don't go away.